Over the years, we have done a BBC on every Thanksgiving, and depending on who gave it, coming from very, very different perspectives, including our teachers. But for the most part, when I looked over the years, the kind of the still point for a lot of them was to really see more deeply and specifically today the kindness of others. That it's a lot about gratitude, thanks, and rejoicing that makes, well, hopefully every day, but in particular this day, because it's such a collective kind of thanking that comes across broad scopes of different people and different cultures. And particularly in the United States, although Canada also celebrates Thanksgiving, but on a different day. But coming to appreciate, so I was thinking about my whole journey with Thanksgiving and to realize that this kind of thinking is not apparent. It was not my default mode for decades. And that was only with the Dharma that I got to see its deeper meaning because it's so crucial as far as being able to generate bodhicitta. But realizing that because of since beginningless time, that we've all had this self-centered thought, this self-preoccupation, this self-obsession, that our mind tends to gravitate for lifetimes just for the thinking about the self and the I and how the I is happy and how the I is great and has all the success. That for me there wasn't such a lens to be able to really look at the bigger scope of how I depend on the kindness of others. And that it's a really slow process, at least for this mind. So today I just wanted to share some little kind of evolutions of this thankful mind of mine, that there has been an evolutionary process from the early days of my life, and that there are stages in finally bringing the mind to seeing the incredible kindness of others. So I counted, just for numbers, I counted all the members of the community, the average age of our community, and figured out we've celebrated, minus the folks who don't celebrate Thanksgiving, about 1,100 Thanksgivings in the course of this community's life. That's a lot of Thanksgivings. That's in our bones, culturally it's in our bones, 1,100 of them. And that each of us has had our own experience, our own gamut of activities and things that happen during Thanksgiving. But looking back on pre-Dharma with the Dharma mind, it is so evident. I'm just almost kind of horrified at the intensity of seeking the happiness of just this life for this just one person, me. Ever since I was a little child, it was really all about me. And not in a way that's judgmental, just in a really, really obvious way. This is like the penultimate, all of our holidays are, but particularly for me, Thanksgiving was the seeking, the craving, the anticipatory excitement about the happiness of, quote, just this life. And that thinking of only me, my happiness, my joy, the movies, the family, the very, very small circle of what I was really thankful for. And because we didn't have this perspective of the happiness of only this life, generally speaking, it was a really nice experience. For my family, it generally was harmonious. We didn't have any big blowouts at the dinner table. There was a lot of alcohol flowing, but generally pretty harmonious from what my selected memories was pointing out right now. And that it's just a 5 cents extravaganza. I can't know how to say it any other way. And for me, it was like, I was so amazed that even just thinking about it, my nervous system was starting to get a little bit, thinking about all the sights and the sounds and the smells and the tastes and the touches during Thanksgiving Day. It was like, whoa. Starting out in the morning with Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which was down Broadway of New York City with those big helium balloons of whatever cast of characters and cartoons and animals and bands and politicians who were trying to get up in the world. If you showed up at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, you were on a political upswing. And then the cooking had already started. I mean, it probably started a few days before that, especially with our house. My mom just loved to make Thanksgiving dinner. And then the folks would show up. I've had a fairly small family, but a noisy family. So as people started showing up, the conversation, the volume in the house began to rise. So after the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, then you went into football time. I mean, there was one football game after another, and the kids are running around and they're getting kind of a little bit of sugar here, a little bit of Coke and soda there, and we're just kind of running around like banshees, basically. And we haven't even had lunch yet. And then, then we had music, we had movies. Oh, it was so remarkable. All of this stuff was going on at the same time. I mean, I'm just so amazed that our senses didn't like get burnt, like over burned or something, or shorted out or something, the circuitry, because there was so much going on. And then in the afternoon, we all kind of hung around. I think it was The Wizard of Oz was always on either Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter. I still love that movie, folks. I'm sorry, I still love that movie. I must have seen it 40 times in the course of my childhood and my life. The first movie made for television. That's how old I am. 1954, it came on TV. But looking at it through a Dharma lens to realize that the holidays and Thanksgiving epitomizes the dukkha of change. You know, you'd think that, at least I would think that after having, it's the whole saying that too much of a good thing is bad for you, that eating a little bit too much pie, eating another helping of mashed potatoes and gravy, drinking a little bit too much wine, having too many movies, and you'd fall in bed at night totally exhausted, just the activity. And then amnesia arises, so the next year you go back and you do the same thing, have the same excitement, have the same joy, like really seeing that if I could just have more of this, I'm going to be happy. When in fact, at the end of the night, you're just so, at least I found myself just tired out. I mean, it was really quite an experience. And at the same time, in that very small circle of family, there was a lot of warmth. There was a lot of sense of comfort and safety and camaraderie. But in a very small circle with a lot of attention. And then I don't know about you, but as I got older, my circle of people that I celebrated with, because it started to include cohorts, colleagues, neighbors, and friends, so the circle started to get larger. So it wasn't just about my family, my happiness, my little piece of the pie, but it became a larger one to extend out beyond just the family. And it turned into more of a potluck thing. People started to contribute, bring their resources, bring their favorite foods. So it became more of a collective and more of a collaborative thing. And I remember once I had left home and went out on my own, that those dinners started to be a little bit more about sharing, a little bit more about rejoicing in good people's successes and fortunes and journeys and their kids growing up, and sometimes their struggles and things like that. So the wishing happiness for each other in a very worldly way, as I got older, became a priority, became a focus of those gatherings. Although I have to say, when I lived in Seattle, it was hard not to get into a comparing mind, because a lot of my friends in Seattle, a number of them were really successful. They had boats, they had nice cars, they were buying houses, they were traveling all over the world. They were running very, very successful businesses. They were just over the moon. And there I was, working 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet. I was like, it became a pity party, I think, for 1 or 2 years. And then there were the Thanksgivings. I don't know if you had any of those, but I had a few that I was alone. Some of them were by choice, and some of them were by circumstance, whether I was just transitioning into another. I moved around a lot during my life. And so sometimes it was just, I just didn't know anybody. I didn't really have a lot of money, and I just found myself sort of isolated. But sometimes I just said, I'm going to do this by myself. I'm going to just be quiet and just be alone. So then after the Dharma comes into our lives, well, then the whole idea, the circle certainly becomes bigger. The kindness of others becomes a real major, crucial piece of practice, especially with having venerable children as your teacher. And how Thanksgiving was more than just patting yourself on the back and being happy about my life, my success, my good fortune. to look past our own noses to see how much we have is due to the extraordinary kindness of others, and how many in the world don't have such cause and conditions. So even in the beginning, 1997, 1998, anytime that Venerable would teach on bodhicitta, equalizing and exchanging self and others as 7-point cause and effect, she'd spend a lot of time talking about the kindness of friend, enemy, and stranger. So, and then she also too would sometimes track sometimes we get into this scarcity mode. She used the analogy of glass half empty, glass half full sometimes, and saying that because we're so self-absorbed, that sometimes we get really kind of into this poverty thinking, scarcity thinking, and whining and complaining, and that's just not the purpose of gratitude and rejoicing. So slowly the evolution of this thankful mind, that sees beyond just this life, kind of where I am right now is the amount of virtue it must have taken for all of us to have this life filled with such Dharma treasures. I mean, we don't even know, to have them at our fingertips. And to pay it forward in a slowly turning habit of mind that delights and seeks out ways to give, not just ways to receive and celebrate one's good fortune, and to see that that's what we're thankful for, is the opportunity to benefit, the opportunity to be able to share, encourage, support, give, help, no matter how small. So to have the mind turn to where the joy is in not just the rejoicing, but also how can I benefit? That's where the thanking comes from. That's where the rejoicing comes from. That I have the tools, I have the opportunity, I have the practice, I have the support of my teacher to be able to grow this, turning outward into an ever expanding circle. And when we can't directly do that to benefit people, then we do it internally with our practice. And over the years, I have seen, because I do this practice consistently, especially when I get into complaining and whining and getting that glass half empty, is that despite what's going on in the world right now, and I try to imagine this, is I have started to see, despite a lot of this polarity and this divisiveness and this suspicion, is that there's just kindness everywhere. Maybe we're creating the causes. This community has received kindness that has no bounds. And I would like to think it's because of the sincere practice of creating the causes and conditions for this. And to realize that if the people in this country, if we could just for a day look to each other with that kind of mind, what would happen to the divisiveness and the us and them and blaming and finger pointing? To see that this country is as great as it is, the world is abundant as it is, because we depend on each other so much, and how that would change the evolution of the human mind. I mean, it would become a deep thought, and it would solve a lot of the difficulties we have right now. So for today, for Thanksgiving, is to think about the greatest thanks, the greatest gratitude that we can give is to think about how we benefit. And may we be able to continue to create the cause and conditions to be able to benefit in wider and wider circles. And each of us, here and far, have particular talents and capacities and skills to be able to do that, and to really use this day to remind us that not is it only just Thanksgiving Day, but every day the Dharma really does give us the tools and the treasure to be able to take Thanksgiving at a whole different level in order to be of the greatest benefit.